2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insight, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Huge bust yesterday. 30 members of TDA indicted. David Olesky, special agent in charge of the DEA Rocky Mountain Field Division, live in studio with us, is going to give us the latest on this. This is a wild story you're not going to want to miss. Now it's time, though, for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. Terrific Tuesday. 63 and sunny in Denver. Expecting a high of 92 today up and down the Front Range. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, at least 40 undercover operations were conducted during an investigation after a request by Arapahoe County Sheriff Tyler Brown, leading to 30 arrests. At least 8 of the people arrested were said to be members of Tren de Aragua. 69 guns were seized or purchased during the operation, and the suspects face charges ranging from drug trafficking to murder for hire. Jeff and Billy will be talking about this coming right up. It ain't over till it's over. There were Russian drone attacks on central Ukraine last night. Before that, on Monday,
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks good.
I said to the one that attacked you last time. See, now I remember that.
Yeah, I apologize to you. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President Zelensky.
In the same suit. You see, I changed. You are not.
Maybe yours is much better.
President Zelensky with the line of the day. I give credit where credit is due. He wore a suit. He purchased it at Joseph A. Bank in D.C., evidently. And then he told the reporter who ripped him the last time he was there, you're wearing the same suit, dude. He said that to the reporter. You are wearing the same suit. Friend of the show, John Decker, was right there to the left of that reporter. Trump played host to Ukraine's President Zelensky, NATO, and European leaders as they agreed that any deal would likely include U.S. security support for Ukraine. DJT says he's also spoken to Putin and hopes to arrange a three-way meeting soon. But once again, they did attack Ukraine last night.
Diplomatic way of finishing this war. And we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good.
Look, we just spoke to, I was just telling the president, I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues.
And it continues as of last night. So, they keep on trying to work on it. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte was there yesterday.
Let me first say that this was a very successful day. And I agree with you that President Trump is a pragmatic peacemaker, as you, I think, said. What he did this year, breaking the deadlock, starting the conversation with Putin, but also putting pressure. We have had the NATO summit to 5%. Which was a big foreign policy success of President Trump. And then he decided to, again, have lethal weapons go into Ukraine paid for by the Europeans. And he put secondary sanctions, tariffs on India. So he's putting pressure, but he is also looking for ways to solve this, to bring this war to an end. So today was very successful with this.
At least for now. Now, DJT trying to get rid of mail-in ballots and where a lot of the fraud occurs. Here's how the lefties see it. Mark Elias losing his mind. His head is exploding.
This is not an executive order on voting, and he's not previewing it. He is saying he is going to lead a movement among the Republican states to do away with a method of voting that people rely on. He's going to issue an executive order that he does not have the power to do. He's going to expect states to act as his agent in the counting and tabulation of voting. And this is what the legacy media, what the Washington Post, what Jeff Bezos's House organ for Donald Trump reports as previewing executive order on voting. I mean, Brian, our democracy is not going to survive.
Yes, it will. Without mail-in ballots, yes, it will. Hamas says it will accept a ceasefire plan put forward by mediators from Qatar and Egypt, but Israel may not. The negotiations have come as Israel prepares, had a cough right there, to launch a massive assault on occupation of Gaza City as the nearly 2-year-old war continues. This proposal calls for the release of 10 living hostages and 18 deceased in exchange for a number of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. All right, our last story before I lose my voice here. Story of entitlement. Rhode Island Special Assistant AG Devin Flanagan arrested for trespassing. Her and her friend appeared to be bombed at this restaurant. They didn't want them in their establishment. I can understand that. They called the police, and then they gave her at least 20 opportunities to leave and avoid arrest. But no, she had to go to the AG card.
You're just being detained. You're just being detained. I'm an AG. I'm an AG. What's wrong with you?
What do you probable cause to detain me for?
You're being detained because you're not leaving.
Because I'm what? You have
Can you relax? Sir, she's not doing anything wrong. She's not leaving.
I'm an AG.
She's an AG? Honey, she's not being arrested. Let's go.
I'm not being arrested.
She's an AG. She is an AG.
Bro,
that
video is wild.
Isn't it though? What is she on? What did she
and
drink?
then her friend that's like kicking the door back open. Don't put me in the back of the cop car.
So ridiculous. So embarrassing, man. Did you know she was an AG? My friend's an AG. Golly. She's a secret assistant AG. Rhode Island. Wow. That was unbelievable. Broncos at the Saints on Saturday morning at 11. Rockies get by the Dodgers 4-3. Tonight at Coors at 6:40, 60 in Lone Tree, 61 in North Glen, 63 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 7:10 5-day forecast. Skies will be clearing into early Tuesday with morning temps a degree or two either side of 60. Then for Tuesday afternoon, sunny, mainly dry. Highs low 90s, lows low 60s. Lower to mid 90s with sunshine continuing Wednesday and Thursday. Lows mid 60s. By Friday and the weekend will cool to the mid 80s with showers and thunderstorms. Weather brought to you by L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call 720-851-1690. Or visit them online at besteverhvac.com. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, federal officials have just dropped the hammer on a violent Venezuelan gang known as Tren de Aragua. 30 individuals, yes, 30, have been charged in a massive case involving drug trafficking, firearms, and even murder for hire plots. This isn't some cartel bust at the border. This happened right here in Denver and Aurora. Authorities say the suspects were pushing meth, cocaine, and a dangerous new drug called Tusi. They were heavily armed. Investigators seized nearly 70 firearms, including machine guns, tied to carjackings, robberies, and drive-bys in our own neighborhoods. And get this, at least 5 of the defendants face charges for plotting to kill 2 people for cash. Now, We've got a whole lot to talk about this, and I am so honored to have one of the guys at the center of this. He's doing incredible work. David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. Brother, huge victory for you, for the team, for the people of Colorado. First of all, on behalf of all of us that live here, thank you. Thank you for what you guys are doing.
No, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for having me on today. It's an honor to be on here with you guys talking about the great work that's being done in the region. Yesterday was honestly a great moment, I think, for those of us in federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, for the community. I think that I got to get up there alongside these other leaders from ATF, Special Agent Brent Beavers, the U.S. Attorney Peter McNeely, and go on and on. There was an all-star team of leaders from across the region. We got to get up there, and as I said, lift the veil on something that was very controversial to talk about in this region a year ago. And what is that? TDA, Tren de Aragua. And so it was an opportunity for us to showcase to the public the great work that's being done by not just our DEA agents, but all the federal law enforcement pulling together and addressing this threat that's been really causing such grave harm to our community.
Yeah, let's talk about the history, because we went down at one point and interviewed some of these folks at these apartment complexes when the story originally broke. And David, I've never felt more in fear of a location in my life, and I've been to some pretty gnarly places, Antifa, all that stuff. We talked to residents of these apartment complexes. So these stories start to emerge that people are being intimidated, they're being harassed by gang members. Walk us through the history and the story behind this major bust that took place yesterday.
No, certainly. Let's go back. I've been here in the Rocky Mountain Field Division here. Our office is just about 20 minutes from your studio here. And 5 years ago when I got here, 4 years ago, I hadn't even heard of Tren de Aragua myself. And then if you go back to last summer, July 2024, at a national level, there's this alert that goes out that Tren de Aragua has green-lighted attacks on law enforcement. That was one of the major things that, at least nationally and also locally, that was made public. And then you get to August, again, just exactly a year ago now, where our DEA agents had made a seizure of 12 kilograms of fentanyl. 12 doesn't sound like maybe that much, but that's enough fentanyl to kill up to 900,000 Americans. And fentanyl continues to be the number one priority for us at DEA. And at that time, when that seizure was made by our agents, that dope was destined for Aurora, Colorado, for TDA. All the indicators, intelligence ticked off that this was a TDA-associated event. And what did they do, Jeff? They put themselves on the radar and on the X, just like the same cartels we've talked about before, Sinaloa cartel, Jalisco cartel. We started committing our DEA resources to going after this threat. And so right around the same time, there's other law enforcement in the region working this, and you ended up having, as the story was told yesterday, that Sheriff Brown, who's awesome, had reached out to ATF first to talk to them about the violent crime, especially the guns that were taking place with the Ivy Crossing apartment complex. They start building a case. What's awesome, and I also want to talk about is, we had all of us leaders from the different agencies up there, and we put our suits and ties on, and we get to talk a little about the op. But the key to this was the line agents, who are all friends, who all get along, who said, yeah, we're going to go after some bad guys. And they don't care about, what the name of the cartel is per se, or the gang. They're going to we're going to get out there, get out on the streets, day in and day out, putting in the surveillance. And so our guys basically partnered with ATF, the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Office, HSI, and really what took place over the course of the past was about 9 months now, 10 months from when that really kicked off, was each of our agencies brought different, what I'll say, skill sets, tools in the toolbox to the table. The ATF, they've been known in their agency to have some legendary undercover operations. There's books, movies made about them, with motorcycle gangs and stuff. Well, this operation against TDA is no different than that. Don't doubt someday somebody will write a book or a movie about what their undercovers did. But there were over 40 undercover operations targeting this group, buying the photos and the imagery yesterday of all those guns that were seized, as well as narcotics. And so it really brought together all of these different skill sets. Our personnel all the way down in Bogota, Colombia, were part of this on an international level. And so it was a really great moment to be able to talk about this yesterday.
real-life heroes with us right now. David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. Let's talk about what these people were doing to the community of Aurora. Obviously, there's a murder-for-hire operation going on, but drugs, weapons. What were they doing? Like, what kind of activities were they engaging in?
A little bit of everything. Everything you just said, obviously what they're being charged with. You had the arms trafficking, the extortion that was going on in those apartment complexes. Now, again, just the overall picture of this gang, the extortion that was going on, kidnappings. You end up having what you mentioned, the murder-for-hire plot.
What was that?
I mean, you ended up having these folks who are basically undercover op, where they were discussing that they were willing, these gang members, to kill for a price. And they were even, if you paid a little bit extra, which was $5,000, they would deliver the head of the victim, to what was the undercover side of this operation. And they also said, hey, listen, if we don't end up, or if I should say, if there's other people who are there in the vicinity when this happens, we'll take them out as well. And so they're ruthless. They treated this as a game. Brent said yesterday, they referred to it almost just like playing golf. This is what they do. And I think sometimes when the controversy that goes around just saying TDA and are they TDA, sometimes what gets lost is like, well, what were these people actually doing? Let's TDA, I think, is very much important for when those of us in law enforcement are trying to coordinate and gather intelligence and build it up to target a network. For the public at large, they just want to say, well, what are these people doing that you're saying? Who is TDA? What are they? Who are they? And, they have their roots in a Venezuelan prison in Aragua, Venezuela, going back, more than a decade ago. And, the stories basically center around that their leadership was basically based in this prison in Aragua. I think it's the Tacora prison. And the government of Venezuela said, hey, listen, on the inside of the prison, you guys can do whatever you want. Just on the outside, they would have the prison guards on the outside, but inside, anything went. And the leadership of this gang was centered there. Now, over the last decade, millions of Venezuelans have fled their country because of the Maduro regime, and TDA has spread out to Colombia, Peru, Central America, and then over the last few years, crossed the border and took root here in the Denver metro area. So it's been our job to uproot them, so to say, from what they've been causing here and the violence they're causing.
That's David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. This is the headline from the Justice Department. 30 charged in sweeping federal case targeting Tren de Aragua members and associates for drug trafficking, murder for hire, and firearm crimes. Give us some background on the drug trafficking side of this. You mentioned fentanyl. You mentioned this new drug, 2C, that's coming in as well. How is that operating? How are they getting it across the border? What does that look like in our communities? How is it damaging our neighbors?
Yeah, what's key to TDA and their drug trafficking activities, a couple things, is one, they're not known, let's say like the Sinaloa cartel or Jalisco cartel, as being the source for the drugs. So they have to have alliances, partnerships with some of the other drug traffickers in the region or internationally. And some of the leadership of this group would be down in Colombia or Venezuela, organizing deals via telecommunications devices, cell phones, and all that with some of these other organizations to secure the drugs here and then traffic it in the region. So the typical methodologies are no different per se than any of the other drug traffickers we talk about. But one of the drugs that's been very unique to this group has been the drug you mentioned, 2C. It's also known as pink cocaine. Very distinct in terms of when you see it, because it almost looks pretty innocuous, just this pink colored thing. It almost looks like some type of Kool-Aid or something, or powdered sugar. So it's, but it's very deadly. There's no ingredients in the drugs that these folks are trafficking. It contains MDMA, ketamine, can contain fentanyl as well. And so that is what is a very popular drug in Latin America, and TDA has brought to the forefront here in the U.S.
Now, that is David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA Rocky Mountain Field Division, joining Jeff and Bill, talking about the huge bust that went on yesterday. I just want to see if you can, a little bit, David, tell us about the new drug, the 2C, where people might experience it, because what I'm thinking of, there could be parents or grandparents in our audience. They may not have even heard of this. They've been focused on the fentanyl. We've been talking about that so much. Since this is brand new, where should parents be worried about this, and how is this used? How would a kid come across this?
No, certainly. It's used just like regular cocaine that we've talked about before, whether it's snorted, in some cases we smoked, but it's trafficked some of the online marketplaces. Also, our undercovers, our informants are buying it right here on the streets in the Aurora, Colorado area. It is a little bit more distinct, I say, in terms of it's in powdered form as opposed to pills. I say oftentimes that fentanyl pills or the counterfeit fentanyl pills don't really have a stigma associated with them, right? In terms of snorting a drug, smoking a drug. You see a pill that we've talked about, the blue fentanyl pills, and people say, oh, well, I take my pills every single day. So one thing that's a little bit different with 2C is that it is in powdered form, and most folks in terms of consuming it would be, snorting the drug, smoking the drug.
That's David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. Big bust yesterday announced. We've seen the videos of one of my favorite videos of all time was down in Colorado Springs where everybody's running out, and our friend Stephen Tubbs is right there. Camera getting everybody as you guys did the bust down there. This bust, did it look the same? Was it kind of all at once? Was it more kind of picking them up one by one? Tell us about the actual operation.
Yeah, yesterday was the announcement that we could finally come out and share with the public the cumulative results of this. And so this was a series of enforcement events taken over weeks and months. And so it was a lot more strategic. And so I'll say is, whether myself or my colleagues at DEA have been on the radio with you, the media asking us questions over months and months and saying, well, tell us more, why this, why that? There are sometimes in those moments that we just have to give that standard answer, sorry to say, where we say, I'm sorry, no further comment at this time. This is a law enforcement sensitive matter. And really, this case, I've said, this has been going on for about 9 months now. When you see those 60, 70 firearms that were laid out yesterday, if back in January or February, whether my partner at DEA, John, was on here talking with you, and you asked the question, he said, hey, no comment, or maybe Brent at ATF was asked, say no comment. Well, the reason we can't talk about that over the course of months is because, we have undercover operatives in with this gang. We have informants work in this gang. We have just our frontline people doing surveillance out on the streets. And if we say something in an interview, that could have compromised even one of those guns being seized, let alone the 60 that were laid out there. So this was accumulation of enforcement events that finally, with the U.S. Attorney's Office, we got to go out there, share with the public. Really one of the highlights, I think, of the operation recently was the apprehension of 2 of these TDA leaders in Medellin, Colombia, just a few weeks ago.
Let's talk about that.
The same agents that were working the case on the ground here, in Aurora and Denver, got to travel down a couple of weeks ago, meet up with our DEA Bogota, Colombia, country agents. I've been there on the ground myself, working 3-4 years in the past. It's an awesome experience to see that other side of the job in the foreign arena.
I want people to understand this. The guy sitting in the studio right here, David Olesky, was operational in Colombia against the drug cartels, brother. You are so next level. But explain to how this.
I love how you present that. But the guys got to go down there, and what we've been doing for months now is passing intelligence from the local Colorado investigation to the team down there.
Yeah.
And they were able to identify these 2 individuals, TDA leaders, and where they were located in Medellin, Colombia. And what's interesting to know, and I don't think had the opportunity to come out yesterday, it wasn't like these guys were always down in Colombia or Venezuela. Right. They were up here in Denver and Aurora, Colorado, just a few months back. In fact, the nightclub scene here in the Denver area, the illegal nightclubs, they were affiliated with one of those right here in Denver. And what ended up happening is one of the nightclubs ended up shifting from the Denver location over to, remember when we did the search warrants up in Adams County? I'm sure everyone remembers that made national news. We couldn't talk about it back then, but those 2 individuals were also affiliated, that group, with the Adams County operation. Now, they weren't there when we executed the search warrants, and due to the pressure that we were putting on the group as a whole, they fled the United States. And it's interesting because the agents were telling me the story when they were talking to them after their arrest in Colombia, that they basically fled this area due to the pressure, and they took, crossed the border. They were taking cars, buses, speedboats. Their first time, they said, ever being on a plane was when they were flown from Medellin, Colombia in handcuffs to Bogota, where they're currently residing in prison pending extradition to the United States. And so outstanding operation by the Colombian National Police and the collective team.
And so that was the pressure that kind of started about a year ago. President Trump came, did the whole Operation Aurora, and you're saying that type of national political pressure, those cartel guys go, well, we got to probably get out of here. The heat's getting hot. And then, of course, you guys start doing the busts and work your way up to them. But that type of attention had an effect.
Absolutely. I mean, you had the Adams County search warrants we talked about. You ended up, that was late January, if I'm not mistaken. You get into February, there was the series of operations we did collaboratively with HSI, ICRO, the other federal partners when we were going into the apartment complexes in Denver and Aurora. Absolutely every tool in the toolbox has been utilized to go after this organization and drug trafficking as a whole and the criminal component that's impacting our society.
That's David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. So the bust that was announced yesterday, 30 charged in sweeping federal case targeting Tren de Aragua members and associates for drug trafficking, murder for hire, and firearms crimes. How big of an impact did that have on cartel operations here in Colorado? Is this a significant interruption of those operations? Where do you all go from here? I imagine the job continues, the train continues to go down the track, but give us a sense of how significant that was to their general operations yesterday.
It was stated yesterday. We had one of the representatives, they call it Task Force Operation Vulcan out of the Department of Justice. He was in here, and he himself said that this is the biggest operation ever done against TDA in the United States. I think it does have a significant impact, but there's certainly, I'm not going to say there's not more work to do. Absolutely there is. They've had a huge presence here, not only in Colorado, Chicago, New York, so the work's going to continue. It's not going to stop. But definitely is impacted, and you can start seeing, I can't get into all the details, but the impact, the messaging that this has is they're going to react, right? And it's always our job in law enforcement to be ready to the next steps in this group, to continue to be out there, to keep the community safe.
Can you talk about the broader effort to confront these cartels? I mean, you guys have been empowered in a way I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime to treat these cartels as a national security threat, to have the funding to go after them. This involves border security, ATF, FBI, DEA, all of you guys working together. We saw just the full array yesterday at this press conference, plus local law enforcement. I mean, it seems like you guys are supercharged in a way I don't think I've ever seen in my lifetime. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about the confrontation of this very serious threat of cartels.
Yeah. I have to laugh just a little bit in the context of what you're saying, because the expectation, the administrator is so high, our folks are ready. But what the messaging is like, this week we're going to surge on this topic. Next week we're going to surge on this. And every week is a surge. And so really, if you're picturing shifting in a car, we're ready to go. We're rolling each and every day. When you go back at the start of the year at the administration, day one, I believe one of the executive orders said, it is goal for total elimination of the cartels. Now, whatever you think of that, that just sends a new message. Like, it's all hands on deck. And I've been on, this is actually this week, we were saying earlier, marks 25 years that I've been with DEA. I've never seen anything like this, where literally every tool in the toolbox is being utilized on the diplomatic side, law enforcement side, to go after the cartels. If you go back from that first day, the executive order, elimination of the cartels, soon after, you end up having, DEA did get Title VIII to utilize immigration as a tool in the toolbox. You go into what was next, the foreign terrorist designation, which did include TDA, Sinaloa cartel, Jalisco, and a number of others, and on and on and on. That the response from Mexico, if you go back, I believe it was right around February, where they released to the United States more than 20 of the top Mexican cartel guys that had been in custody for years down there, which included Rafael Caro Quintero, who we have been waiting DEA to see a U.S. prison cell for the murder of Kiki Camarena. That story's been covered so much over the decades. And then just a week ago, we ended up getting another 20 folks who are expelled, combination expelled or extradited from Mexico. Again, that wasn't happening before. And so I think the pressure, tariffs, another thing, that the president and the administration, in terms of negotiating with Mexico, are putting out things that they want more work done on the cartel. So you see every different aspect, to include border security, the unified federal law enforcement front here in the region, but nationally, is having an impact. And it's really, motivating. I say our folks have this renewed sense of purpose in our mission, which, means so much, to all the ground troops to have that support at the highest levels of government.
I mean, I can't imagine what the cartels are doing in light of this, right? We're talking to David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. How are they responding to this use of force in a way they've never seen before? I mean, it seems like I remember one story. They're basically like flying in to the United States and giving themselves up at this point, right? Like,
yeah, they feel the pressure, no doubt about it. They're going to continue to react, but now it's really up to us and law enforcement to continue to use these tools with the support we have. We've got to take advantage of this moment on all fronts, and that's the law enforcement piece. That's the outreach, education piece. This Thursday's National Fentanyl Awareness and Prevention Day on Thursday. We still have way more American lives being lost each year, even though the numbers are down. The numbers that just came out last week were, I believe, somewhere between around 77,000 American lives lost to a drug overdose or poisoning.
But this is why the naming of these cartels, the designating of these cartels as terrorist organizations is so important. They've killed way more people, Americans, than the radical Islamists in Afghanistan did, or those types of terrorist cells. I mean, these have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans.
It's millions, Jeff. It's millions. When you add up, you look at that 12 months and you hear 77,000. But you go back the year prior, as well over 100,000 for a number of years in a row. And so it is. It's well over, a million the last decade. Wow. And so I think that's where what continues to motivate us, at DEA to continue to go after these groups. Because the work's not done. If you go back to the 1980s with the Just Say No era, if you go back then with the cocaine and crack epidemic that was going on, I don't know. Do you know how many Americans were dying each year back in the 80s?
No.
Yeah, it ranged from about 1,000 to 4,000 a year. Now, way too many, right?
Yeah.
But think of what launched the outreach efforts, the Just Say No program in schools, and here we are talking about 70,000, American lives lost year is an improvement. So I think it shows, yes, there's less, less numbers than last year, but still we got to get out there, keep talking about it on every front. So when you have some of your listeners, if you're in the education space, you're in colleges, you're in universities, please, we reach out to us, message this to your students. For the parents and families listening, you're sending your kids back to school or going back to a college campus maybe for the first time. Before you send them off, have that little talk. Don't hesitate to talk about the dangers of fentanyl and the other dangerous drugs. You can go to our webpage, DEA.gov, where we have resources for parents to talk to their kids about this. Just over and over, I've met with families who've lost a loved one, and they would do anything to have that moment back to talk to their loved ones about, this topic.
Well, I did the Citizens Academy with DEA. We heard from a father who lost his two sons on a single night because they thought they were taking an Oxycontin pill or something like that. It ended up being fentanyl. And this campaign, one pill can kill, is exactly right. And you got to get deadly serious with your kids about this.
No, absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Anything, a Tic Tac given to you by your friend could kill you. You can't accept that stuff.
Absolutely. And I wanted to also put on the radar of your listeners just another trend. We've historically been talking about these last few years, the blue fentanyl pills, the M30 counterfeit pills. Just last night, I was talking to one of my friends in Los Angeles, as well as John pulling the S.A.C here is going to Houston. They have had significant seizures just in recent weeks of counterfeit Adderall pills. And the ones in Los Angeles were interesting because they predominantly had contained and tested positive for methamphetamine. But the ones that are in Houston area were testing positive for fentanyl. So same exact pill in terms of appearance, the counterfeit pills, orange pills looking just like Adderall, but they're tested positive for fentanyl. And so I think that's, I don't want to get lost. If you're not getting your pills, your kids and parents directly from a pharmacist, if you're getting them on the dark net, you're getting them via some social media app on TikTok or Snapchat, and your kids are getting them, highly probable they're coming from the Mexican cartels, and they're not being diverted, from a doctor or pharmacy.
Well, I think one thing that's fascinating about this current moment in the war on drugs is how much they disregard these cartels do with trying to keep their customer alive. There used to be a general sense they're a customer. We want to keep them alive. We wouldn't overdose. They don't care at all anymore. They're happy in many ways to create disruption, to murder Americans, whether it's China, Venezuela, Mexico. These countries are killing our kids with these drugs.
Absolutely. And it's all about the money. They don't really care. I always say over and over, it's not that they're trying to kill their customer, but they don't care if they do so in the process. It's that profitable. And I clearly remember a conversation with some of my agents. It's a couple of years back now, but where one of the traffickers here locally had told an undercover agent, "Hey, listen, if you find out that these pills kill someone, just let me know, and we'll lay low for a few days." It wasn't as if he said, "Hey, we're going to stop doing this because it killed someone." No, we'll just lay low. So, greed is the number one motivator for them, and it doesn't matter if it's counterfeit Adderall pills, counterfeit fentanyl pills, cocaine, or 2C. They're out there to make money.
Well, one book that we were discussing that I've read that gives you an interesting insight into how we got here is The Least of Us by Sam Quiones, which will give you kind of a history. But one thing you learn from studying the history of this is so motivated by greed, by profit, and they'll harm anybody in order to do it. And it has to be combated with force, with funding, with essentially unleashing the FBI, the ATF, the DEA, border security to go after these cartels that are willing to kill our own friends, neighbors, family members in order to make a profit. And these guys are doing it. Joining us live in studio, David Olesky, fighting the good fight, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. We'll continue our conversation. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Headline coming from the United States Attorney's Office, District of Colorado, 30 charged in sweeping federal case targeting Tren de Aragua members and associates for drug trafficking, murder for hire, and firearm crimes. Now, joining us live in studios, David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. One of the key guys in this big bust. It was so awesome. It was like, yes, you're watching FBI, ATF, Border Security, local law enforcement, you guys up there, all united, all taking down the bad guys. It's beautiful. It's what we want to see in America. Now, David, one of the things that's intriguing is some in other aspects of media will go, well, Tren de Aragua, were they all members? Did they have card-carrying membership? Talk to us about how you identify somebody as a member of Tren de Aragua. Are they all members of it? Is that even important?
Absolutely, it's important. It's important, I think, both for us in law enforcement and for the public. But that has been one of the most challenging questions, and probably at the core of it, the controversial question, is because what's being asked is how does a Venezuelan prison gang make its way, all the way up here and have a presence in Aurora and Denver. And so one of the challenges, whether it's this overall operation or individual operations we've done, is trying to provide the public those answers. And what I think is, let's just go back with Tren de Aragua. Where are they from? When membership was first determined, this organization, you actually had to be a member of this gang and serve time in that prison in Socorro in Venezuela. Now, as they migrated out of Venezuela, again, I said earlier, fleeing the Maduro regime, the migration going to Colombia, Peru, Central America, the United States, some of those characteristics in terms of original membership, it changes, right? So when we, early on, were looking at characteristics, there were certain tattoos that members of the gang would end up having. When we're factoring in, if someone's a member or not, some of that comes from debriefings of people we've apprehended. Some of it's from wiretaps and connections that we've made from one individual to another. So it's an assortment of different things. Yesterday, when it was announced, we clearly said with the attorney, 3 of these individuals in the indictment are leaders. We said 5 were members, and then everyone out there as part of it, I think it's safe to say, is linked or associated. Now, the controversial part just becomes, well, I saw a headline yesterday of one news thing said only 2 members of TDA were apprehended of 30. I don't know where they got the number. The headline should have been, these individuals are alleged to, murder for hire plots, $5,000 to behead someone, as opposed to this, sometimes happens, this political debate about their characteristics. Look, as you said, they don't walk around with a card in their back pocket saying, I am a member of TDA. They're not announcing it. In fact, in many aspects nowadays, there is an anti-Tren de Aragua movement amongst the gangs and people saying, they raise their hand if they're apprehended and say, no, I'm not Tren de Aragua. I am anti-Tren de Aragua. Like, we are the gang that's going after them, opposite them. So that's been one of the challenge. 2 of the individuals that were apprehended in Colombia, they were 2 key members of what was taking place up here, organizing, had a leadership role in the trafficking of the firearms, the trafficking of the drugs, and was really an outstanding, arrest and part of this operation.
I think what's really important, too, to remember in this, because we saw this face-to-face when I went and interviewed members of people that lived in these apartment complexes, is that Tren de Aragua was targeting other immigrants.
Absolutely.
Right? And you had these women. This really gets me. These women that had traveled through 7 countries and abused and assaulted all along the road up here. Mm-hmm. They believed it was a lie. They believed the lie that the border was open, that America was open. They could just come up here. Because we have to remember what's being communicated down there isn't necessarily what we know up here, but that was communicated to these people. So they came all the way up here. And then this gang in Aurora extorts them, abuses them, tortures them in some capacities. And, it's another conversation for another day about how community leaders ignored it, with the exception of like Danielle Jurinsky and others that really tried to expose this. John Fabricatori, good friend of the show, trying to expose this. But you guys came in and stepped and came to the rescue of innocent people against these gangs, and
well, yeah, I think
big deal.
The point you're bringing up is that when folks are migrating to the U.S., illegal migration to the states, the victims of the crimes are so often those people who are just, yes, they're trying to seek out a better life, whether they're coming from Mexico, Venezuela, Colombia, it doesn't matter. They're victims of the crime en route to getting here.
Yeah.
But then also a key moment I remember back in February, and Stefan was out there with me. We were out in the Cedar Run apartments, in the law enforcement operation that we conducted. And I've told this story. There was a grandmother who was in the hallway coming out, and I speak Spanish, and I was talking to her, and she said she personally had been a victim of crime multiple times, had her car stolen. She has her daughter and granddaughter living in the apartment. And I don't know her status, in terms of legal or illegal, but she was from Mexico. I had asked her where she was from. And that's what I think is often not spoken about enough, is just the victims of the crime. It doesn't matter if it was stolen cars, robbery, shootings, all of this stuff that this gang has done, the extortion that was taking place in those apartment complexes. This gang, Tren de Aragua, we haven't said it enough, a foreign terrorist organization, and the harm that they've caused our community.
We'll continue our conversation. David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division, live in studio. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Show. Live in studio with us is David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division, 30 charged in sweeping federal case targeting Tren de Aragua members and associates for drug trafficking, murder for hire, firearm crimes. This guy was at the podium talking about it all yesterday. We've been having a wonderful conversation. Now, David, you guys are hiring DEAs looking for a few good men and women to join the team.
No, absolutely. DEA.gov, you can go to it, find more information on how to join our team. For me personally, I crossed 25 years this week. Wow. It has flown by. I grew up in New Jersey. I was an accountant before this. And if you had asked me back then how far I'd go or where I'd travel and see, I'd be like, maybe I'd go from Jersey to New York or Maryland or Philly. And this great career has taken me to Los Angeles, Panama, Colombia, right here to the Rocky Mountain Field Division in Denver. So for anyone listening out there that wants to honestly join the fun, a very meaningful mission and what we're doing nowadays, go to our website. We're looking for, great people to join our team at DEA.
Yeah, what makes a good DEA agent? I've gotten a chance to meet a lot of you folks. These are fantastic men and women, lots of different personality types, but who makes a good agent?
You got to believe in the mission. You got to believe in what you want to do. I love when we have applicants or folks of interest come in and we do a little orientations session. I say, look, if you want to get out there and hunt, if you want to go after really bad people, and kind of like participate in that investigative nature of going after, the bad guys. It's as simple as that. But sometimes you get some people who come in and say, like I say, it's a lot of long hours. You miss a lot of, birthdays and parties and ceremonies and things like that. You got to live the life of the bad guys. And if that, interests you, then this is the team for it, where you got to want to be relentless. You want to get out there on the streets and get after it. You do everything at DEA. You can write a wiretap. You can be on surveillance. You can do undercover. You can work the local aspects. You can go abroad like I have. It's an outstanding agency, and I'm so proud to be a part of it.
I mean, and it covers a broad spectrum from analysts like you, Brad, up to guys that are busting down, kicking down doors, and even Stephen Tubbs.
And even Stephen Tubbs.
We love you, Stephen. Thank you so much for setting us up. David Olesky, Special Agent in Charge, DEA, Rocky Mountain Field Division. Please give my best to all your agents. They did a fantastic job, and you listening are safer because of their work. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.